just as a forewarning, I am going to be spoiling a lot of important stuff for Reverse Collapse. Like, that's just unavoidable with what I want to talk about today, or tonight, I should say. So if you're looking to get into the game and experience things for yourself, make sure you don't tune in for this stream until next time. But if you don't mind, I'm glad to have you around. This is a slideshow I made like 10 hours ago, just so we can all be on the same page. So this is all about connecting Ghost Frontline and Reverse Collapse and seeing how it all works. So this is all from my point of view, and I'm pretty sure most of you guys may be able to correct me on a few places, but this is just so I can get out my thoughts in a very coherent manner. So I first want to go over what I feel actually works. It works very, very easily. So to get into that, is that Reverse Collapse allows you to see the actual end of the world. That's pretty set in stone. I don't think there's any contradictions anywhere in Ghost Frontline. And the end of the world happens around the 2100s, and it's done by Jeff D and Lucica, but it's mainly Jeff D. So again, I don't see anything wrong with this. The 2100s is when Doomsday happens in Ghost Frontline. Now the next thing that I feel is not contradicted at all really is Nirvana. Reverse Collapse explains Nirvana very, very, very well. So whoever actually controls Nirvana is able to do a lot of timeline stuff. They can even go back to the very beginning. Nirvana is a cognitive realm that experience whenever a person is able to connect to a relic. At least that's how it says here in the definition. As far as we know, there's only been 3 people who have reached Nirvana. Maybe 4, if you want to count a certain someone. The first one that we knew was Lunacia. Second one was Jeff D. The third one was Lucica or Lucia, however you want to say it. And then the fourth would be Nadia. But Nadia is like a really strange case, and it's kind of hard to fully count her. So the way how Nirvana works is you initially start, and then you reach a divergent point, and that divergent point, yeah, Irma as well. And that divergent point that's where a major choice happens, and there is probably an infinite amount of choices. But you can only see the choices that you actually make. So at that point, you have to personally witness the consequences of your choices. If you don't like your choice, you have to restart. In Jeffy's case, that means offing herself. And then once she restarts, her memories gets transferred to the next Jeff D. So the important thing to note is that Jeff D can transfer to any point in time as long as a Jeff D exists. That means she can go back to when she was a kid. That means she can go to when she's an adult. And it could be right smack dab like a minute before she did her restart. The Master Jeff D, the God Jeff D, is in Nirvana, and she is the one that kind of holds all the memories. I like to see it as a game where Jeff D, Nirvana Jeff D, is the player, and she's playing a video game, and she has multiple save files. And those save files are all the Jeffties in different timelines. But this also means that Jeffy cannot change events she is not present in. So for example, the reason why the end of the world happens and Jeffy cannot change the end of the world is because she is not present in the area where the end of the world actually starts. And that is when William creates Lucica. She cannot be at any area where William is because she literally ran away from him. So as Jetty cannot change the event that is the catalyst to the end of the world, she is unable to prevent it. So it's just very important to note that even though Nirvana is very powerful, it's not omnipotent. There are limits to its power. For the most part, this all applies to Lunacia. However, Lunacia has more complicated rules and events. First of all, Lunacia has multiple hosts. That's Emperor A1, Dandelion, and the human Lunacia von Oberstein. Jeffy has one, technically two hosts, but it's really just one overall. But Lunacia has three, and technically more than three, because she can also possess Nidos. The text here is kind of small, so I'll just read it out. Basically, it's saying that Lunacia transfers into a white Nido to talk to William. Isomers, for the most part, are able to, well, not for the most part, but isomers are also what we consider imperfect hosts as well. And then the third one is that Lunacia does not need to die to restart, which is actually a pretty big deal. But effectively, all Lunacia needs to do is just eject herself from her body. She can literally just do that. One of the issues that Lunacia has is that she is mentally unstable. As human Lunacia, she actually believed with all of her heart that she was M4A1. And this was back during the time that she was with Bill, her little brother. It just made her seem like a total schizo. Now, the thing is that Jeffy also has this issue as well. You don't see this with the actual Jeffy, but you see it with Lige, who is also Jeffy. So my thought to this is that even though Lunacia has more going on for her, the rules are overall similar for both of them. Lunacia's Ogus system may be the reason why she doesn't need to die and she can just eject herself. Now, here are the issues that I have with Reverse Collapse and Ghost Frontline as a whole right now. First is that William just doesn't make sense to me. So, if you guys don't know, William is a title, and I looked this up, and I think there are 5 Williams that have appeared in Ghost Frontline as a series. It's William who did the Valkyrie Project, William Zinn, Martha, Ballard, von Oberstein, and Professor William. So William from the Valkyrie Project is a lead researcher who experimented on human Lunacia, and he apparently died before World War III ended. And this is confirmed by Javier, who looked into it, and he concluded that someone stole William's identity. The next one is William Zinn. He is potentially, like 50-50, he's potentially the original William. But he has been stated to have died in 2053, which is after the William from the Valkyrie project. Like I said, it's 50-50. Maybe the dates are just wrong. But William Zen seemed to be like a person who just kind of there and hasn't really done anything. Which is why I'm thinking like, hey, maybe this was the guy who got his identity stolen. So the next one to that is Martha. She appears pretty late in Ghost Frontline 1. Now, I know she doesn't use the name William, but she has the role of William, as shown in the text here. That she didn't like the name William, but in a way, she had that role while Bill was still working on his stuff. So I do count Martha as a William. As far as I know, Martha taught William a lot of stuff. From what I've read, you can infer that Martha was William's teacher. Or Bill's teacher. Just so we can be more specific. Now, the main guy, Bill. Now, I'm assuming he is a protege of Martha. That's not like explicitly stated, but it is implied very well that Martha taught Bill a lot of stuff. He's also responsible for creating the Nitos. He's a mass murderer, a syscon, all that good stuff. He's assumed dead in Ghost Frontline 2, but there's a very high likelihood that he's alive. And he would be 17 years old by the time Ghost Frontline 1 ends. And then our last guy is Professor William. He's the primary antagonist of Reverse Collapse, creator of Strikes. He's a lead researcher of the Three Goddesses program, and he created Lucia, who ended the world. And he's assumed to be in his 40s by 2092, which lines up with Bill. So there's a high likelihood that these two, Professor William and Bill, are the same person. But I'm separating them just for the sake of keeping things organized. So here's some notes between Bill and Professor William. Bill would be 5 or 6 years old when he created the brain scan of Lunacia and sent it to Persica and Lycoris. Bill will also be 7 years old when he sent the Pike to Lycoris. Bill will be 10 years old when he created the Lunacia clones. And Bill would be 14 years old when he killed Lycoris. And Professor William would have been working on Strikes before Ghost Frontline 2, but 1 ended. I don't know about you, this is like the part where I go, does that make sense? Big brain child. Yeah. So, there are some explanations for this. One is that it is possible that he stole people's work. The other is that it's also possible that Martha assisted in his research. So, those are both definitely possible explanations. The third possible explanation is that he's just a super genius. Like, even if you want to discount Martha actually makes it up. Like, even if you want to discount him actually making the brain scan, because he never actually explicitly states that he makes a brain scan. Maybe that was Martha's doing. He still did all this other stuff. It did say that William, aka Bill, was the one who sent the Pike, and Bill was the one who made the Lunacia clones. And Bill definitely killed Lycoris. Wasn't going to say by Persica to be both younger than Lycoris and smarter than him, though? Yes, Persica did say that. Persica did say that Bill was more of a genius than Lycoris was. So this is all just things where I'm like, man, that's actually kind of weird. I'm not sure if I can actually digest that. It is possible that William was just like a super genius at like 5 years old, but at the same time, he didn't actually really get. It's like, how much could he actually have done at 5 years old is the question, really. So it's not impossible, but it is strange. I will put it that way. So the next part that I have issues with is with Lunacia. Perska assumes that Lunacia von Oberstein died in 2051. And according to Reverse Collapse, this clearly cannot happen. In the 2050s, Hannah von Oberstein, which is Lunacia's mother, forced Lunacia and Bill to join a cult. This cult was raided by the Stasi, and Hannah was killed in battle. Lunacia abandoned Bill and ran away. In the 2050s, Lunacia von Oberstein became one of the leaders of the cult movement. In 2058, Lunacia von Oberstein was presumed to have died in a bombing called the Second Purge, regulated by the Stasi. And in the 2060s, Major Kane Schwaben, which is K in Ghost Frontline 1, spotted Lunacia von Oberstein leaving a cafe with another guy, and they went in separate taxis. There's definitely a big contradiction there. In Ghost Frontline 1, it clearly shows in memories from Infrared 1 that Lunacia was hospitalized and died in 2051. But later on, in Ghost Frontline 1, Bill states that Lunacia and Hannah were murdered. So there is a clear contradiction to the memories in Infrared 1 and also Perska's alibi, not alibi, but testimony, I guess you can put it. Because Bill says that, yeah, that his mother and his sister were killed, which would fall more in line to what was said in Reverse Collapse. Future Hermistic here, I just want to clarify something about Hannah that is pretty important. Again, Bill does state that his mother was murdered by the government, which falls in line with the confidential files in Reverse Collapse. But within Lunacia's memories, it is clearly shown that Hannah used herself as a blood sacrifice for a ritual to strengthen Lunacia in some way. This information is not in Ghost Frontline Global right now, so we don't have a full translation. But it is pretty strange that Lunacia's memories are so drastically different from what Bill remembers. Could it be retcons? It's possible it could be retcons, but I don't think so. I'll get to that later. Now, there is also contradictions in Operation Bakery. And these are actually pretty interesting, and this is where my foundation starts to build up, I would say. So there's a timeline in Operation Bakery where the survivors never ran into strikes. These strikes never appeared until the 2100s with the creation of Lushka, a Jeffy clone with Shrike DNA. This started the end of the world. This is also a timeline where Eleanor, Atana's sister, never died. This is also a timeline where Mindo's parents were never confirmed dead. And confusingly to me, this is the timeline where Nirvana Jetty came from. And the timelines that we mostly see in the game is full of strikes, as well as Lige, who was not in the original timeline, and most importantly, Sugar, who is not in the original timeline. And Sugar is a major antagonist and is directly operated by William. Sugar is also the one who kills Eleanor before Operation Bakery. She got a nice personality. Yeah. So in both cases, these are extremely heavy differences in the timeline. And my question is, why is that the case? And that's it for the slides. That is where I ended up at. Hold on. Is Girls 92 even the same timeline as the main RC story? So that's actually where I'm actually pointing towards. Not exactly that, but I think a lot of it is timeline fuckery. Because one of the things that a lot of us have forgot, including myself, is that even in Ghost Frontline 1, Nirvana is already being used. Nirvana is already occupied, even from the very beginning of the game. And is occupied by Lunacia. So we have an M4A1 who is being M4A1, but there is a Lunacia who is already in Nirvana. She's just not doing anything. But that would also imply that Lunacia has reached Nirvana beforehand. And she has been using it. And this is an example of like this is the quote-unquote main Girls Frontline 1 timeline where the commander is going to die. And that's when Emperor A1 would decide to help out. But the important thing here is, I want to show, is that M4A1 asks, do you not have any feelings? And Lisa says, I used to, but that was a very long time ago. So this implies that this Lunacia was active in Nirvana, but she lost her emotions. And this is backed up by Cartesian theater as well. This is Laplace's demon. I don't know why they decided to make it look like this, but yeah, that's what she's called, Laplace's demon. It says, I told you, I'm an all-knowing Laplace's demon, blah, 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 blah. The only one that Laplace's demon will serve is the esteemed Lady Lunacia. And M4 says, I am not Lunacia. And Laplace's demon states, you would rather play house with these lowly beings than become an omnipotent god. However, Lady Lunacia, if you choose to remain Emperor A1, it will only end in terrible tragedy. And basically he says, like, if you're Emperor A1 and choose to continue being Emperor A1, you're always going to be in living through pain. And if you were Lunacia, then you'd be able to be a god. And then she says, does the Emperor A1 at this very moment think she is the Emperor A1 of the actual world in its entirety? Now that sounds like word salad, but this is actually very important. I told you, this is just a game. It's all an illusion. I can present it in a different way if you like. In games, all stories are pre-written. All programs have rules by which they operate. All characters are subjected to their own destiny. This is the source of Emperor A1's suffering. You are Lady Lunacia, but you've forgotten your purpose. You have simply been living a tragedy in 2064 as M4A1. You are obsessed with this tragic story and believe that the characters are real. That's where your pain stems from. Only by reassuming your identity as Lunacia will you be able to find your true sense of self as a human and find a path to true rebirth. Then you can reboot this game and rewrite everyone's destiny and ending. So I think that portion right there is the most telling part. And I believe the reason why I never brought this up before is because I didn't actually believe Laplace's demon. I thought she was just talking shit. But now that I've actually fully looked into this, and thanks to Reverse Collapse, honestly, I think Laplace's demon is actually telling the truth. For this part in particular, at least. I'm going to bring up one more thing, just to show where I'm going with this. And this was shown back in Polarizing Light, or chapter 13, technically. So flashbang here. So this is in Nirvana. Back then they call this Zion, but it's actually Nirvana. Or at least peering into Nirvana. And there's like two voices called the elderly voice and cold voice. So the elderly voice and cold voice says that Emperor 1 is just a fragment of Lunacia. And same thing with Dandelion. They're both fragments of Lunacia, but they are both worthy of quote-unquote coming home, but home has been corrupted. There can be one single survivor, but nobody wants to be the one. And it says here, the source has deserted the loyal servants and entered an eternal slumber. Smashing the tombstone and waking us will only bring bitterness and resentment. The second line doesn't matter. It's really just this line, because the source, in this case, should mean Lunacia. So what this means when you put it all together, Lunacia used to be operational in Nirvana, but she got to a point where she no longer wanted to do this. So she actually ejected her quote-unquote heart and put it into the real world so she can live as a different person. And that different person would have been Emperor A1. And that would also explain why when Emperor A1 actually jumped back into Lunacia von Oberstein back in the 2050s, everyone around her is confused because Lunacia the human kept calling herself Emperor A1. And they're like, yo, there is no Emperor A1. Why are you calling yourself a T-doll? You're a human. Laplace's demon also states that she is obsessed with quote-unquote suffering. So putting it all together, my theory is that there are two different timelines. The first timeline is the one where the original Lunacia was doing stuff. And the second timeline is the one where Emperor A1 exists. I don't think Emperor A1 existed in the original timeline. We do know that the original Lunacia, the human, she has lived at least up to the 2060s. And she has defied death twice. The first one being in 2051, where she had an illness where she was going to turn into an Elid. But we also have to assume that she was probably semi-immune at the very least. And then the second time is when she was supposedly bombed by the Stasi, but she wasn't killed. That could have been a Nirvana thing, though. Who knows? It also kind of explains Bill, because if we assume that Bill had prior knowledge, this could also explain why he was able to do what he has done as a kid. And this could also explain the sudden strikes that appear in Reverse Collapse compared to the earlier timeline where there were no strikes. So the only thing that bothers me about this, about my explanation, is that it doesn't explain Ghost Frontline 2 much. Like, it kind of leaves Ghost Frontline 2 in limbo. But it at the very least explains the conflicting timeline stuff. If there's two timelines, it will explain why there's such a drastically different timeline in Reverse Collapse. And it'll explain why there's somehow a human Lunacia that is still alive and just hasn't been fucked with, more or less. How much can Lunacia influence? So as long as she has a host, she can personally influence, not personally, but she can indirectly influence a lot of things. So Lunacia operates kind of differently. Well, I should say differently. She has more resources than Jeff D. She has host bodies, which is like Emperor A1 and Dandelion. And she has agents like Dandelion again, and Paritha, and anyone with an Ogus, really. So through her agents, she's able to do a lot of manipulation. As long as her agents actually listen to her, which for the most part they tend to. They tend to do so. The problem with that the theory is what happens to Bill. That is the thing, right? So Lunatia's primary problem is that she doesn't want Bill to die. It's the Lunatia von Oberstein part of her. She loves her brother enough that she doesn't want him to die. That goes with some assumptions with Ghost Frontline too, where Lunatia allowed Bill to die. But again, it seems very likely that Bill is still alive. But I think one of the confusing parts about Bill is that if we assume there are two timelines, we also have to assume that Bill is aware that there are different timelines and he has knowledge of what's going on. And if we want to maintain consistency between Ghost Frontline 1 and Reverse Collapse, Bill should be aging correctly, because he is the correct age going from Ghost Frontline 1 to Reverse Collapse. That's actually quite accurate. So there shouldn't be a point where he actually died and then he gets revived like years later, because it would throw his age off. Okay, so what if there's one Lunatia who is working for the commander and another Lunatia who's working for William? That is very possible. Or I say that was very possible, I should say. Because we have a Lunatia who was originally there, who was originally in Nirvana, but then she got so grief-stricken that she no longer wanted to be a player, so to speak, which is why she separated her heart and lived as M4A1. That's my theory anyways. That's my theory, I should say. I shouldn't say it as fact. But the assumption is that Lunatia that was originally there, she was working with her brother.